It is my great honor to introduce our speaker today, Marian Wright Edelman, founder and president of the Children's Defense Fund. She has been an advocate for disadvantaged Americans for her entire professional life. Under her leadership, the fund has become the nation's strongest voice for children and families. Mrs. Edelman, a graduate of Spelman College and Yale Law School, began her career in the mid-60s, when as the first black woman admitted to the Mississippi Bar, she directed the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund office in Jackson, Mississippi. In 1968, she served as counsel for the Poor People's Campaign that Dr. Martin Luther King began organizing before his death. For 2 years, she served as the director of the Center for Law and Education at Harvard University, and in 1973, she began the Children's Defense Fund. Mrs. Edelman chaired the Board of Trustees of Spelman College from 1976 to 1987, and was the first woman elected by alumni as a member of the Yale University Corporation, on which she served from 1971 to 1977. She has received many honorary degrees, including one from Newcomb College of Tulane University in 1988. She has also been honored with the Albert Schweitzer Humanitarian Prize, the Heinz Award, and a MacArthur Foundation Prize Fellowship. In the year 2000, Mrs. Edelman received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian award, and the Robert F. Kennedy Achievement Award for her writings, which include 5 books. I recently finished reading her most recent book called Lanterns, a memoir of mentors. It's an extraordinary book. If you have not read it, I recommend you buy it this afternoon and read it tomorrow, because if you want a piece of inspiration, and if you want a lantern for your life and the rest of it, this book will give it to you. It is my great pleasure to introduce and present to you Marian Wright Edelman.
Thank you. I too want to thank Hamilton for a really thoughtful statement, and I am delighted and honored to share this great day of joy and achievement with your trustees, with your president, with your faculty, with your families, with these extraordinary honorees, and with, more importantly, what I'm sure is the best graduating class in the history of Tulane University. It's time to build a mighty movement, to leave no child behind in the richest and most powerful nation on earth, and I hope you will be a part of it. It's an incredible moral moment in history that we're living in. Very few human beings have been blessed to experience a new millennium and a new century. How will we give thanks to God for the earth and nation and children entrusted to our care? I hope by applying our hearts to wisdom as the psalmist counseled, and by applying our minds and our action to justice and righteousness as the prophets and Christ and Gandhi and King urged. This is a time for goodness and greatness, not for greed. This is a time for idealism and not for ideology. This is a time for empowering people, citizens, young people, parents, rebuilding families and communities, not a time for rugged individualism. This is a time for making sure that we have both compassionate words and compassionate leaders and compassionate policies from all of our leaders. This is a time to share America's great prosperity with those who have been left behind in our world and in our own nation, especially our children. It's a time of great political transition. We have a new president who has repeatedly used the Children's Defense Fund's trademark mission words and promised to leave no child behind, a standard to which we should hold him and all of us. He eloquently stated that America at its best at his inauguration is compassionate. In the quiet of America's conscience, we know that deep, persistent poverty is unworthy of our nation's promise. And whatever our views of its cause, we can agree that children at risk are not at fault. How do each of us work with him and with our leaders in all parties to translate these words into reality for the 12 million children who are poor, the 10 million who still need health insurance, the millions more who need quality early childhood experiences to get ready for school and need a decent education and need after school and summer programs? It's the wealthiest time in American history. We have a $10 trillion economy, a projected $5 trillion plus budget surplus at the federal level. We're number one in billionaires and millionaires, the top gross domestic product in the world. It's also a time of stunning American intellectual, technological, and scientific achievement. We've won 168 Nobel Prizes in science this past century. We've sent humans to the moon, we've sent spaceships to Mars, we've cracked the genetic code, amassed billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars from a tiny microchip, and discovered cures for diseases that can save the lives of millions if they can access treatment. We can transmit information faster than we can digest it, and buy anything we desire instantly online in our global shopping arcade. Wouldn't you think that we could commit and figure out how to teach every one of our children to read by 4th grade? A churning new world order is being born. Changing rules of doing global business are creating important new questions, challenges, and opportunities. Who will gain and who will be left behind? Will the life chances of the poor, women, and children be enhanced or exploited? Will the changing nature of work and the demands of the new economy strengthen or weaken family and community life and job security? Will cultural homogenation and corporate branding contribute to or detract from the rich diversity of our nations and world's peoples? How can we close the spiraling digital health, income, and education divides between the rich and the poor in the world and at home? Just 4 wealthy Americans possess greater wealth than the GNP of the 34 least developed nations in the world with over 650 million people. Harper's Magazine estimated in '97 that over 240,000 people could be fed for 1 year with the food we Americans waste in one day. The gaping divide between rich and poor nations is mirrored in the growing gap between rich and poor in our own nation. The wealth of these 4 richest Americans exceeds that of 14 million American families combined, exceeds the revenues of 24 state governments with 42 million citizens, and could lift 12 million children out of poverty, the overwhelming majority of whose parents work 5 times over. An American child, at the richest time in our history, is born into poverty every 44 seconds. And contrary to popular stereotype, most of them are white, live outside of inner cities, and in households where someone works. More than 317,000 Louisiana children are poor, about 1 in 4. That's not acceptable. An American child is born without health insurance and the world's leader on health technology every minute. Nearly 1 in 4 Louisiana children, over 240,000, lack health insurance. And you rank 48th in the percentage of children without health insurance. We can do better. We can change these. An American child is reported abused or neglected every 11 minutes, one in Louisiana every 35 minutes. And the killing of children has become routine. We let an American child or a youth be killed by guns every 2 hours, 20 minutes, 10 every day, one in Louisiana every 2 days. These facts are not acts of God. They are our moral and political choices as a nation, and you and I must and can change them. Sunday before his death, Dr. King preached at the Washington Cathedral in my neighborhood, and he warned, after telling the story of Dives and Lazarus, that Dives did not go to hell because of his wealth. He went to hell because he did not see and help his brother. And he feared that America could make the same mistake and warned that our wealth could be either our opportunity or our downfall. And he called in 1968 for a Poor People's Campaign to help bridge the gulf between the have and have-nots. The question, he said, is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new, he said then, is that we have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will. And that is the even more urgent question in America's economy today that has tripled in real value since Dr. King spoke. Although we have made enormous racial and economic progress in many areas, huge inequalities remain, as I have pointed out. And I hope that we will make a commitment, particularly with you young people going out into the world, that it is time to end child poverty, to end child preventable sickness and neglect and abuse in the richest nation on earth. And I hope that we will be vigilant in monitoring and insisting and in raising our voices with our elected officials to be just and to be fair to all Americans. I hope, and you have heard here a lot about the importance of redefining the measure of success. I do hope as you go out into the world that you will never work just for money or for power. They will not help you sleep at night or buy you a ticket to heaven or a loving family. I hope we can realize Dr. King's dream 33 years later in this new era of an America that will judge our children not by the color of their skins or the stylishness of their clothes and cars or the size of their bank accounts, but by the content of their character. And remember Robert Kennedy's warning about the GNP's limitation, which he said did not count and does not count the health of our children, the quality of their education, the joy of their play, the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, the integrity of our public officials, or our courage and wisdom. The GNP, he said, measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. I also hope that as you leave Tulane, that you will plan as carefully and thoughtfully for raising a family if you choose to do so, as you do about your career. And remember that children are a lifelong commitment, and they need mothers and fathers to make a good transition to adulthood. My third hope for you as you leave is that you will struggle, however many times we all fall and fail, to live what we preach, and to struggle to be what we seemed, which is why I always felt so blessed with my mentors. I think the single biggest problem facing American children is adult hypocrisy, and we must remember that our children do what we do, not what we say. And if we want our children to be honest, then let's be honest. And if we want them to serve, let's serve. So struggle to be real and understand that you are a mentor in what you do every day in your homes, in your classrooms, and in your professional life. Fourth, and I'm almost done, is to assign yourself. So many Americans are waiting for Gandhi or Dr. King to come back. A Sufi mystic once said, as he was being railed at by someone who said, "Why doesn't God come and fix up the mess in the world?" And the Sufi mystic responded, "He did. He made you and me. And he did make you and me, and we can be the hands and voice for building a decent world." My role model is a woman named Sojourner Truth, who was an illiterate slave woman who could not stand slavery or second-class treatment of women. And although hundreds of those years back, during slavery, her cause seemed hopeless, she never lost an opportunity to speak out for justice on both fronts. And she got heckled one day by an old white man who stood up and said, "Old slave woman, I don't care any more about your anti-slavery talk than for an old flea bite." And she snapped right back at him and said, "That's all right, the Lord willing, I'm going to keep you scratching." So often we think we have to be big dogs, and we do face big problems, and we feel overpowered. What we need is for each of us to be a strategic flea for justice. Enough fleas biting can make the very biggest dog uncomfortable. And how we're going to build a children's movement is to have lots of parents, lots of mothers and grandmothers, lots of citizens, lots of young people just deciding that we're going to build a movement and insist on justice for all of our children. And if we do, we will build that movement that leaves no child behind. Let me end with a prayer on this glorious day of achievement. Because if each of us commits to care and to serve and to organize and to vote, which is our responsibility as citizens, if we care about our nation, then we can bring about the transformation that we must bring about if America is going to be a moral beacon in the 21st century world. And when I get overwhelmed in Washington, which is rather often, I try to remind myself that I don't have to preach like Martin Luther King or turn a poetic phrase like Maya Angelou, but I care and I'm willing to serve. God, I don't have Harriet Tubman's courage or Franklin or Eleanor Roosevelt's political skills, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I can't sing like Fannie Lou Hamer or organize like Bayard Rustin, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I wish I were holy like Archbishop Tutu and forgiving like President Mandela or disciplined like Gandhi, but I'm not, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I'm not brilliant like Elizabeth Cady Stanton or as eloquent as Booker T. Washington, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I don't have Mother Teresa's saintliness or Cesar Chavez's gentle, tough spirit, but I can care and I can serve and I can vote and I can organize. God, it's not so easy as it used to be to frame an issue and forge a solution, but I care and I'm willing to serve. My mind and body are not so swift as in youth, and my energy comes in spurts, but I care and I'm willing to serve. So many young people say, "I'm so young, nobody will listen, I'm not sure what to do." But every young person can care and serve and vote and organize, and you've been inspired to do so today. And there are many ordinary people who do extraordinary things, who say, "I can't see or hear well. I don't speak good English, I stutter sometimes, and I'm afraid of criticism, and I get real scared standing up before others." But we must encourage them and remind them that they care and can care, and they are willing to serve. Each of us today, as we go out to meet life and to shape life, I hope you will ask God to use you, to use each of us as God wills, today and tomorrow, to help build a nation and a world where no child is left behind, and every child of God throughout this world will feel welcome and cared for. Godspeed to you.
Wow, you are getting Hall of Fame messages today. In case you're wondering whether there's a conspiracy amongst all of us to deliver a single message, we didn't script it that way, but I'm sure glad it turned out that way. Marian, I want to thank you for an unbelievably powerful and important message to all of us, and not just to our graduates, but for all their family and friends here, because the message you delivered is one for all of us to learn, because we all need to serve more and better. So thank you very, very much.